Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. We're really excited to be able to present our Christmas Unwrapped insights. We're going to be reviewing the Black Friday, Cyber Week, and Christmas retail period. Before we start, we just want to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be covering. There's going to be around about 40 minutes of content, and then we will take questions at the end, and you can submit those through the GoToWebinar chat. And if we don't get to all of those, we will absolutely get your account manager in contact so we can answer any additional questions that you may have. So what are we going to be covering? So we'll be delving into the following trends through the presentation. So we saw a very different trend and performance this year compared to last year, so we'll be digging into those areas. We also saw quite a different approach in terms of some of the category trends year on year and how those shifted across those peak weeks. We'll look into how Amazon was running the promotions in that pre-Black Friday period and right up to Christmas and what they did to achieve that. And then digging into some of the key areas there around the discounting, their search performance, and then also their multi-channel strategy, which was key to driving those Amazon conversions. And then we'll jump into some of the emerging trends that we've seen through 2018 around sustainable and ethical retail and how that is going to impact brands through 2019. So just a little bit about Hitwise. We've been supporting retail brands for over 20 years. And really from a perspective of how we collect that sort of information, we have a panel of 3 million people in the UK. And what we're collecting is anonymized and aggregated URL data that we're able to then develop into the metrics that support a real range of propositions that we provide. So providing measurement services to understand and benchmark your performance, both at an audience, a visit, and a conversion level compared to the competition. Understand and discover who those audiences are, what are their interests and experiences they're interested in, and how can we help acquire more of them. And then from an optimization perspective, understanding what are the gaps and opportunities across each channel that we can address to improve the performance of campaigns. And then finally, to track the lift of campaigns, both online and also from offline campaigns, to track their online performance, which is becoming increasingly important. So I'm Giles Longhurst, Managing Director of EMEA and APAC, and I'm joined by Lisa.
Hi everyone, my name's Lisa Liu. I'm the Global Head of Insights at Hitwise, and we're really excited to be presenting our Cyber Week and Christmas Insights today. So just as Giles had mentioned, on an industry level, we saw a very different situation in the UK at the end of 2018 compared to 2017. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So firstly, what we've done here is combined British Retail Consortium data in Q4 and merged that with Hitwise data. So in the end of 2017, what we had reported was actually an increase in like-for-like retail sales in November and December. But when it came to the end of 2018, we had essentially the opposite trend and a complete reversal of those results. October saw a slight increase in like-for-like sales, but in November and December, the UK had actually seen a drop or a decline in those like-for-like sales. Zooming into online retail sales, it's still very much driving growth for the retail industry, currently accounting for 1/3 of all total sales. But at the end of 2018, this was growing at a much slower pace than what was reported in 2017, particularly in those months of November and December. When we compare this with Hitwise data, looking at online retail visits year on year, we again saw that similar trend. So October, end of 2018, a slight increase of 0.2% in retail visits, but again a decline and a significant decline in November at -2%, and also a decline in December at 0.7%. So let's look a little bit deeper into those online retail visit trends. So what we've done here is map that out weekly over Q4. And when you see the 2018 line, almost all weeks were actually lower than 2017, with the exception of the pre-Christmas window, which slightly grew at 1.5% in 2018. But again, a very different situation to what we had reported in 2017, which saw a significant growth of 8.6%. So it wasn't just online that saw that decline. What we've done here is merge that data with Ipsos retail footfall. And what Ipsos had also reported weekly in Q4 was a drop compared to the previous year. And the only weeks that grew was in that pre-Christmas window. So the week ending the 15th and also ending the 22nd of December. So similar trends to what we saw online.
Yeah, and I think we certainly looked into some of the trends in terms of weather patterns between the two years as well. And certainly we did see quite a difference in terms of the temperatures and also kind of weather conditions going into those two Christmas periods, which may well have been a factor that caused some of these trends as well.
Definitely. So overall, that does paint a sort of negative picture. Online retail is growing, but at a slower rate. But when we look at total retail, it's actually declining year on year. But on a positive note, we've actually seen conversions online grow. And this has grown significantly in that pre-Christmas window, which was up 11.5% year on year. So what we've done here is aggregate 30 top retailers to get this average online conversion. So looking at visits that led to an online purchase. So again, something that we thought was really interesting trend. And there could be several reasons behind this. As retailers, we could be getting more effective at converting shoppers online. And also from a consumer angle, we're more confident, particularly over the years with making purchases on our mobile phones from visit to online purchase.
Yeah, and I think overall it comes down to the higher conversion rate is definitely a positive factor, but we also know that the discounts did start earlier, and so it's how much is being driven by the discounts and how much is being driven by the confidence in the kind of online purchase process. So those two factors are definitely interacting with each other during this period. So when it comes to looking deeper into the peak weeks of retail by category, we saw a number of shifts year on year. We dig first into the top two categories, the department stores category, and also look at the apparel and accessories category as well, these being the kind of biggest sort of drivers overall. Department stores accounts for around about 40% of traffic over Q4 and peaked in that Black Friday week and then tailed off. And then the apparel, the second largest vertical at 16%, grew around 5% year on year. But this was the first time we saw this industry actually peak over that Black Friday week rather than the Christmas week as well. So certainly a slight shift in trends there, but still these are very much the dominant categories. So we strip out the two biggest categories in this next slide and start to dig into the sort of categories underneath to try and spot any specific trends that we can see around these different verticals. The top two rising industries, house and garden and groceries, up 6% and 9% respectively over the quarter. So quite an interesting trend there that we've seen, and actually quite a growth over the course of the year. And then electronics and toys is something we've seen that's been declining, and this has probably been a notable trend again over the good part of 2018. Certainly there is more searching and purchasing occurring on department stores like Amazon, but we also saw the closure of Toys R Us, which has had quite a big impact on consumers and their plans for where they now purchase these products instead.
And they were also the top player for the toys category in pre-2018 as well, having a massive shift and impact when reporting on that sub-industry.
Absolutely. And I think week on week, we certainly see most of the categories are aligned with that Black Friday peak, but groceries and alcohol and flowers and gifts really do surge in that sort of period just towards the Christmas break. So taking that kind of a next step and breaking down the Q4 period into the key sort of sales periods or blocks of that peak period, we do see those similar kind of trends continuing. Certainly within department stores and toys, both of them decline over the Black Friday period and Xmas week. And we do also see and note, I suppose, a number of closures of stores in that period as well, with House and Garden, Tesco's Direct, and as we mentioned before, Toys R Us. Within electronics, we certainly saw the biggest drop here right across the board, or right across each of those those traffic periods. But we did see some growth in the health and beauty industry just pre-Black Friday as well. So a little bit of a mix there. For apparel and House and Garden, both of them grew in that Black Friday week, and then pre-Christmas, with a small decline just over that Christmas week, but overall up for the quarter, as we noted. And then really for flowers and gifts and groceries, this was a really positive story. All of them growing really pretty much right across the board, and groceries having grown right across the year, which has been a trend that we've been following.
And seeing that 19% rise over Christmas week, which is quite massive considering online retail, as we reported earlier, had seen a drop, particularly that week.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we'll dig into more of that in Amazon as well, and some of the sort of promotions that they've been running in those areas. So next we'll look at who were the kind of key players that drove the rises that we saw in these industries. So first up in apparel, it wasn't just those online fast fashion brands that we've probably been tracking for a number of years now. It was also new sort of players in the market, in sort of the athleisure kind of sector with Gymshark, but also some of the high-end brands as well, like Brand Alley and Farfetch, that also provided some pretty significant discounting over that Black Friday period, as you see with some of the numbers there. So that really supported their growth and drove those industries in a number of ways. When it comes to House and Garden, we did see some pretty significant discounting from some of the key players in this industry as well. So over 50% discounts, drawing in the kind of interest for Matalan, Wayfair, and Oak Furniture. So quite big changes maybe from previous years in really trying to combat some of the discounting elsewhere. And then within groceries and alcohol, right sort of mixture of players here that we're kind of calling out, which I think is an interesting dynamic and shows the sort of opportunity here with some of the key supermarkets like Iceland, and we'll cover more on some of the strategies they've had this year. Really making an impact and seeing over 100% increase over that Black Friday week, but also some of the players in subscription boxes such as Beer 52, and also manufacturers like SodaStream, seeing some really significant increases that came through during that period as well. So I think this is definitely a trend across these, and what we have seen is all of them having a pretty significant 2018 in terms of improved performance, as they built up that customer base through the course of the year, and then providing those discounts and special offers to really drive the performance as we go into the peak trading period.
Definitely.
So what we thought we'd do is dig in a little bit further to find out, sort of other trends that are going on, especially within that electronics and toys section. So who was it that was, really drove the changes there in terms of those specialists, and where those audiences are going now that Toys R Us aren't around? Where are they actually going? And certainly it's still a massive industry with over 24 million unique users, but it is declining really 5% right across the board for the different categories we've broken out here. So what we're looking at on the chart is a view of the total audience, and then a breakdown by households with children 1 to 4 years old, 5 to 9 years old, and then 10 to 15 years old, using Kantar Media's TGI data to provide that sort of extra lens. The more interesting, I suppose, sort of trend that we're seeing here, though, is then, overall, for a much smaller audience, we've seen this growth in app voucher searches. So what we're looking into here is this trend, I suppose, towards less about sort of the physical gift and more about supporting the interests of this age group. So 58,000 searches, but a pretty significant increase in the size of this audience, going up 61% year on year. And this is people searching for app vouchers like iTunes and Google Play. And I suppose the call out really is in that 5 to 9 year old age group, where we really see a significant growth taking place, which our sort of views on this is what we're seeing is a wider trend that's going on, with parents becoming more conscious of products, materials, kind of plastic toys, and starting to think slightly differently, as well as obviously the pressures from the 5 to 9 year old age group to buy them the thing that they want.
You wouldn't know anything about that, right?
And only the thing that they want. So a bit of a mix of pressures within the family, as well as a slightly more conscious choice.
Yeah, which we'll touch on a bit more later when we're talking about those consumer trends as well.
Definitely. So digging a kind of a slightly different approach to this is just sort of how has gifting kind of changed, and we have done quite a lot of work ourselves around looking into the experience economy, as well as another number of other insights companies offering that type of view of the growing industry. And we also dug into a report by Barclaycard looking at their customers in October 2018, and this showed that 1 in 5 adults in the UK plan to buy an experience gift for Christmas, and this was really I suppose off the back of seeing that 56% saying they would prefer an experience than a physical gift. So we're seeing that trend from the previous slide coming through in the stats by this Barclaycard research, and something that's really developing over the course of 2018, and no doubt will be a strong factor into 2019. Looking at the Hitwise data, some of the top sites within this category, so Buy a Gift was up 14% year on year, Virgin Experience Days up 11%, and then Prezibox up over 100%. So some really significant growth there for each of those players within that space. And we actually managed to get some stats looking specifically at Virgin Experience Days, which they told us that basically the Black Friday sales were up 40% year on year. This is the biggest sales day in the company's history. So that's really impressive kind of growth there. And the top selling sort of gifts were within the adventure category were indoor skydiving and also Segway tours. So two sort of areas that we've seen interest in. And then in the food and drinks category, it was really around culinary workshops, immersive dining, and then the combination of the tourism plus kind of dining experiences as well. So quite a trend to pick out as we go into the beginning of this year. And then lastly, some really positive trends here in terms of some of the growth in those industries and some of the opportunities that are opening themselves up. But we can't kind of forget the growth and dominance that we've seen of Amazon, with over 26% of the share of traffic during this period. And almost reversing how we'd normally look at these things is only 1 in every 5 people didn't visit Amazon during this period. So two stats that really stand out in terms of how Amazon is taking the kind of share of this market. What we look at on this chart is really 2 different metrics that are kind of approaching understanding this dominance in a couple of different ways. The first one is the reach, which is basically looking at the share of visitors going to these sites from the whole of the shopping and classified industry. So it really is providing an understanding of the opportunity to interact with consumers that are within this industry. And we kind of work a lot around this metric because it does provide that slightly different view than just a visitor share. And then the darker green is then the actual visitor share, which you might be more familiar with, which is providing the actual share of visits that is going to these retailers. And I think what's quite nice as a comparison here is you look at Amazon versus eBay, and both have actually pretty strong reach. They've got a voice across large swathes of the retail consumer base, online consumer base. But the difference in the number of visits and visits per user, which is driving the visit share, is very pronounced between these two brands. The other kind of one to note is Screwfix, which has entered the top 10. This is replacing Tesco's Direct from last year. So quite a change there, and shown by some of the trends we've seen in the growth of House and Garden right across the peak period. So a couple of trends there coming through. And and overall, I think for us, this is quite a key metric for us to think about in terms of how we use this as a kind of KPI to understand the performance of brands in a sort of share of the opportunity as much as a share of the traffic.
Great. So as Giles had pointed, Amazon once again dominated in terms of both visitor share and also visit share. So in this next section, we wanted to actually break down what success meant. And we saw that they had ran promotions quite successfully from pre-Black Friday right through to Christmas. So firstly, in the lead up to peak period, we saw a number of key categories on Amazon grow extensively right up to November. So a couple of ones to call out: toys, children and baby. In terms of purchases made in that category, it grew by 79% compared to the previous month. And also flowers and gift cards shot up by 62% compared to the previous month. Another aspect that we also wanted to show was the purchase rate of these categories. And exceptionally, Amazon has quite high conversions when we're looking at that purchase rate. So firstly, what we mean by purchase rate is the number of products that are being purchased over those page views of those particular purchases. So for flowers and gift cards, Amazon's converting at almost 22% for that category, which is really significant. And another one to call out is Amazon's also converting for groceries and alcohol at 13.5%. So another really interesting trend, knowing how much that Amazon's really investing in groceries and alcohol with their acquisition of Whole Foods, and also increasing and expanding their range with Amazon Fresh as well. Another angle we wanted to look at was Amazon's conversions. So these are the number of visits that lead to an online purchase over that Q4 period. So if you recall that slide a bit earlier in terms of macro trends, what we've done here is compared that overall average of those 30 top retailers, their conversion rates on a weekly basis, to Amazon's conversion rate on a weekly basis. And as you can see, Amazon is converting over twice the size than that industry average. And in particular, they're peaking in that pre-Christmas window at 8.8% in the week ending the 22nd of December. And when we compare that year on year, it's grown really significantly, up from 7.5% in 2017.
That's quite a significant jump, that 7.5 to 8.8. I think in terms of, I suppose, the confidence from the consumer in the fact that they can, get those things last minute, whether it be the actual physical goods or whether it be actually the gift vouchers. I think that's kind of a really interesting trend.
Which is something we're going to show in a few slides away.
So what we thought we'd do is just actually look and make a comparison between the Amazon customer and the Amazon buyer, or should I say the Amazon browser and the Amazon buyer. And what we're looking at here, and the red line is very much a view of the total amount of people that are visiting Amazon during that period. And what we see is very much the peak on the Black Friday period, with a 26% increase week on week, which we'd kind of expect, and then generally trailing off through the pre-Christmas period and through to the end of the year. On the sort of counter to that, it's actually the Amazon buyer and Amazon only buyer, which we see kind of peak around just after the kind of just around the pre-Christmas period. So we see this growth up to around 4.5 million people on the 24th of November on the Black Friday week, but continues to grow right up into that pre-Christmas period. So they're almost counteracting and growing their exclusive audience during that period as well. And the last line, the light orange line, is then the Amazon only buyer. So this is people who are only buying on Amazon and not on the other top 7 retailers that we included in this analysis. So it starts to show how they are, I suppose, creating extra dominance in that period, and really sustaining their exclusive audience right through that sort of 5-week period up until the Christmas break. And that sort of that sort of lead, and in terms of the largest kind of growth year on year, was in that 2-3 days before Christmas, which we're seeing in a number of the metrics that we're providing. Is that 22nd of December is where we're really seeing that
key
growth.
period of growth. Yeah. So we wanted to dig a little bit deeper in what drove those Amazon exclusive buyers. And for us, it really is inextricably linked to Amazon Prime. So in this chart, we've looked at the people who've signed up to Amazon Prime or visited Amazon Prime sign up page. And we can see those two key peaks in the week of Black Friday, where signups rise to 59,000, and also even higher in that pre-Christmas week, where signups peaked at 63,000 as well. So again, what Giles had alluded to, that last minute shopper and the convenience of delivery same day or even next day, really prompting and growing that pre-Christmas window sale. Another angle that we also wanted to look at was what differentiated those new Amazon Prime signups. And we can see over that period, they're significantly more engaged on Amazon site than your average online visitor. So in any given week over this period, a new sign-up visited Amazon site 7 times in per week, which was 4 more visits than the average online population. They're also visiting other sections of the site, like the beauty section, house and garden, but as well, in particular, the Amazon Fresh section, which was 4 times more likely than the online population. Again, pointing to the expansion and growth in that groceries and alcohol space, being able to provide that timely service and range for the new Prime sign up.
Yeah, I think the trend there is pretty interesting in terms of how much is Amazon using peak to drive subscriptions as well. I mean that's also got to be a strategy that's going to support 2019. And although we see on the right hand side of the chart there it dropping right down, really for that that week after it's it's in the high 30s as the number of sign-ups during that period. So it's not dropping right off the face of the planet. It's just dropping down from the
significantly from 63,000. Yeah. So we wanted to show what was behind Amazon's success as well. So they're sustaining the number of buyers and exclusive buyers for that 5-week period. And for us, it really came down to deep discounts, their search strategy, as well as their multi-channel strategy, which we wanted to delve into a little bit in our next section. So looking at those top products over that Cyber Week period, so Amazon launched their Black Friday sales, again, a few days before on the 16th, and had those sales lead up right to Cyber Monday, which fell on the 26th of November last year. So firstly, looking at Amazon's own devices, it's no surprise that these products, they're heavily discounted, and consumers have come to expect those significant discounts over Cyber Week period. And a couple of call-outs, the Echo Dot 3rd generation, it was on offer for half price, and Amazon saw over 190,000 purchases in that 10-11 day period, with the purchase rate at 13% as well, and also significant purchase rates for their other products as well, including the Fire TV Stick, the Echo 2nd generation, and also their beloved favorite, the Kindle as well. So to put these purchase rates into perspective, when we compared that to October, a number of these products, they were mostly converting at 2 to 3%. Again, pointing to the fact that it's something that consumers are expecting, they're viewing and holding out to that Cyber Week period. But as we know, it's not just Amazon's products that are discounted. A number of other hot products and top sellers are offered at over 40% their retail price in that Cyber Week period. So these included the SanDisk, the Oral-B toothbrush, electric toothbrush, the Fitbit Charge, and also Michelle Obama's new book, Becoming, which was offered at over 40% as well. The only product out of these 5 that didn't have a significant discount was the Nintendo Switch, which was offered at 10%, but it was still the cheapest in the market compared to other retailers. So really connected to Giles's point around the exclusive buys and buyers at over 4.5 million for that 5-week period, we saw a number of those discounts being sustained leading up to that pre-Christmas window. And so the top products included the Fire TV Stick, Becoming, and also the Echo 2nd generation. And quite interestingly, a trend that we pointed out last year, gift vouchers, including the printable gift vouchers for the super last minute shopper, really spiked and converted at almost 60%, as well as their standard gift voucher, which was on offer for one free 1-day delivery, converting at 30% as well.
Yeah, so the other area that we've seen over the course of the year and dominating through the Q4 period is really Amazon growing as a search engine. We're seeing the number of searches that are occurring on Amazon has grown over 31% in this period. And I think this is a factor in terms of the overall consumer choice of where they're going to Amazon to really start both the journey of purchase, but also when they know exactly what they're looking for, they know they're going to find those discounts, and that's kind of ringing true. When it comes to Google, absolutely still key driver of the traffic within the retail sector. But what we're seeing is a 32% decrease from Google over this time period. So this kind of Amazon as a driver of retail search is really coming forward. When we look slightly slightly different periods, we see that actually the week of Black Friday, Amazon was up 32% and Google down by 20%. Whereas the week before Christmas, Amazon was up 39% and Google down 16%. So actually shows again that kind of trend right up to the sort of the final booking period where Amazon is driving its performance.
So we wanted to isolate and zoom a little bit deeper into Amazon's Black Friday performance. So how the week that kickstarted their 5-week promotion. So looking at this on an hour-by-hour basis, Amazon once again dominated almost every single hour when we compare this to the other top retailers. And we wanted to call out 3 key hours as well. So at 6 a.m., they saw a sharp rise in visits, up over 130% compared to the previous hour. At 9 a.m., they see another surge and first peak of the day. And finally, visits peaked again at 6 p.m., again significantly higher than the other top retailers. When we compared this year on year, similar hourly visits, but Amazon saw a greater share of traffic in that 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. period year on year. So what we wanted to do was actually isolate what products were driving those hourly spikes and also what channels drove those hourly spikes. So quite interestingly, at that 6 a.m. rise period, it was really gaming consoles and searches for those hotly anticipated products that really spiked up at 6 a.m. So these included the PS4, the Xbox One, and also the Nintendo Switch as well, which saw almost over 500% growth in searches compared to 5 a.m. And then as we moved on to through the day to that 9 a.m. surge, searches happening on Amazon then shifted towards more smart tech and towards more appliances as well. So a mixture of branded products like the Echo, like the Hive and the Fitbit Charge, but also a rise in generic searches around appliances like the coffee machine, air fryer and electric toothbrush. And then finally, at that 6 p.m. peak, again, another shift in the types of products that were being searched for on Amazon. So we saw growth in TVs or TV-related searches, as well as electronics, and then people starting to think about Christmas and their Christmas decorations, with searches for advent calendars, for instance, up over 500% in that hour of 6 p.m.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting trends here to pick in on, and I think that that shift from brand to generic is an interesting one. But I think it also really helps us understand how to think about the overall product mix that should be highlighted on on websites and emails, particular hours, and try and find ways to this is both a good an Amazon trend, but it's also a trend of the consumer. Amazon's helping drive this, but the consumer is thinking in this way, with the hot products they really want to get in on early and make sure they get the last one on the shelf, versus the sort of last minute choices towards the end of the day when they've realized things that maybe they've forgotten or other things they're looking to buy.
Definitely. So we wanted to connect that data as well to traffic sources, so where Amazon was getting that traffic from. So again, at that 6 a.m. rise, quite interestingly, Amazon, compared to the other top 49 retailers, had a lower share of traffic from search. But again, connecting it to Giles's point that he had made earlier, Amazon is growing as a search engine, which is behind that decline. Quite interestingly, they received a higher share of traffic from rewards at 6.5% compared to the top 49 average of 4%, and also from news publications as well. So significantly higher than the top 49 too. So for the rewards, we wanted to highlight that point because it was really interesting to see that Amazon, it was the first year, and they raised eyebrows for promoting their products on a number of different reward sites like Hot UK Deals. And through this hourly data, we can see that actually it worked quite well for them. They actually drove a significant share of their traffic from those reward sites as well. Then moving on through the day to that 9 a.m. surge, we can see that Amazon's traffic sources, search had grown, but they also saw a larger share of traffic coming from email and IT publications as well. So if we were to connect those dots with what we saw on the previous slide, consumers are searching for more smart tech and for appliances. It's really connected with where they were at 9 a.m. as well, looking at IT publication sites like Tech Radar, like T3 Magazine too. And finally, towards the end of the day at 6 p.m., again, search was dominant, but we can see that Amazon received a significant higher share of traffic from social, like Facebook, like YouTube and Instagram, compared to the industry, and also a higher share of traffic from email too.
Yeah, so I think, in summary here, not everyone can discount at the levels that Amazon has with its own, its own product range, but actually getting closer to thinking around how consumers are seeking out products, when and where they're doing that across the different channels really helps to build together a real wealth of information, both at a product level, brand level, and also channel level, to really make sure that there's a way to sort of interact and take some of the learnings that Amazon have developed this year or executed on this year and bring that into your own strategy as well. So we thought we'd look at some of the consumer trends that are really cementing themselves this year around sustainable and ethical retail. And what are the brands, or who are the brands that have actually caught on to this and made some successful wins here as well? So what do we care about more in Q4 2018 than previous? And no surprise, we couldn't really not include this on this slide, and no doubt this the interest in this over the coming hours of today are going to increase even further. But certainly the focus on Brexit is well and truly there, and understanding the interaction of your brand with both the positive and negative sentiment towards Brexit is going to be key. There's over 1.2 million searches in this period, and that was up over 101% year on year, and spiking even more as we speak. What does this mean? Well, what it means is people are focused on understanding how they sit from a money and budgeting perspective. And we saw a pretty significant increase in the number of visitors to mint.com, which provides a range of services to help you better manage your money, as well as the sort of interaction between Brexit and property, both for UK as well as European property. How are people feeling about that, with over 400% increase year on year in the searches of people for those two terms in the same session. When it comes to the sort of more sustainable and conscious choices, we thought we'd pick out some of the trends that we thought were quite positive in terms of the way that retail and the consumer is starting to focus slightly differently. We saw almost 700,000 searches for veganism, and then similar kind of increases in focus for clean energy, with a 13% increase year on year, and also ethical fashion up by around 10,000, around 10% year on year. So certainly kind of trends that are going to be important to try and make sure how they resonate with your brand. And then from the perspective of some of the trends that I suppose are more negative, single-use plastic, palm oil as well, has been one of the areas that's been a keen focus for people searching for over that Q4 period as some of those campaigns have gone live. So what's driven this, and I think how have the brands responded? Really, this for us has been a combination of factors going on here. It's both driven by the media, but also driven by the consumer. And I suppose one of the big starting points we've all talked about is the enormous impact of David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2, which really raised those concerns around waste and plastic in the oceans, and that's been a trend that's continued really through the rest of 2018. And it's great to see a lot of brands have really got on with that and started looking at ways to interact and make sure they are having the right sentiment and the right promotions to understand what consumers are looking for. So we saw a number of examples of this, from H&M and the Burberry's pledge to make fashion more circular and make it more sustainable, from Asda's initiative to tackle microfibers, which is kind of a key focus within a lot of their campaigns. And then Aldi really focusing on solving the amount of unsold fresh food that's thrown away every day, to try and make sure that they're having a more conscious approach to the environment and supporting that side. And then Iceland as well, campaign with their TV advert that was running and across social media as well, really focusing on their ban of palm oil as well. So certainly some trends there that have been picked up and are starting to resonate, both between the media but also with the consumer as well, which will be something to watch for 2019. So have these campaigns, have these pledges worked? We wanted to look into that and try and understand how things have changed over the Christmas period as well. What we did was we mapped out the vegan searches audience against the top supermarkets. Possibly no surprise, in the top two we've got Sainsbury's and Tesco's attracting the largest proportion of the vegan audience, with over 30%. And they're the largest players in the market, so we somewhat expect that. What we thought we'd take a slightly different angle and look at the proportion of vegans within each supermarket's audience. And here we see a slightly different ranking, with Ocado and Waitrose having the highest share of that vegan audience. But also, looking at that index, we've got 4 and 5 times more likely to be visited by this audience than the general online population. So real, both an opportunity, but also shows maybe some of the previous focus they've had on the ranging of offering they've got, and also, the underlying audience that they're attracting as well. Sainsbury's and Iceland have seen the biggest rise in these in the vegan audience year on year, and certainly points to the success that they've had in expanding their vegan ranges as well. So they're the kind of the ones we call out in terms of kind of the change year on year. And then really looking at a similar exercise for ethical fashion. So what we wanted to look at here is having a look at the whether this, I suppose, is kind of a combination of the positive or negative kind of sentiment towards ethical fashion. And it could be that it's a case of people being more engaged and purchasing from these brands, or it could be that they're more concerned and conscious, and so making sure that it's being thought about in the right way. Again, we look at the total size with ASOS and John Lewis reaching the largest proportion of that audience, over 50% of the ethical fashion audience. And then when we look at index, again, really seeing a slightly different shift here. So H&M and ASOS coming through, having the largest shares, but also much more likely to be visited, nearly 5 times more likely for both H&M and ASOS to be visited by this audience. So definitely some change there. And then from a growth perspective, year on year, M&S and Asda, certainly the ones that grew the most in that period as well. So again, talking to a combination of factors that are going on right now. So what does this mean? I think really for us, it's quite a simple exercise of creating these audiences, using the power of search data and the intent that sits behind search data, that it can be both very timely and picking up these new trends, but also showing that kind of real interest and sentiment towards these changes, and really understanding, what does your audience care about? So what is your share of this audience? Is it increasing or decreasing? And then sort of digging in to find out whether it is, in this case, a positive or negative sentiment towards your brand as well, to make sure that you're either talking to and carrying out the right PR that kind of gets the consumer on side, or expanding further your dominance in that area.
Great. So just to summarize, we've covered a lot of different insights from an industry level right down to a consumer insight angle as well. So to sum up all of those points, firstly, we covered that the industry is seeing a decline when we look at like-for-like retail sales. But when it comes to online, it's still growing, but at a much slower pace. But on a positive, what we had pointed was that conversion rates, particularly in that pre-Christmas window, has grown significantly. Giles then looked at the category level results, and again, just seeing how those different categories were shifting and rising quite differently online year on year. So the majority of categories, they peaked over Black Friday, with the exception of groceries and gifts, which peaked closer to Christmas. And finally, looking at top retailers, we couldn't cover Amazon. They once again dominated with 26% of all retail traffic and also 80% of that retail audience reach. And another stat we wanted to highlight was that whilst their visitors had dropped from Black Friday through to the end of the year, Amazon was able to attract over 4.5 million buyers and also exclusive buyers over that 5-week period up until Christmas. We then dug a little bit deeper to try and understand what drove those successes, and highlighted that Amazon searches starting on Amazon and also ending on Amazon were up 31%, which was a stark contrast with a 32% drop in searches coming from Google going to retail sites. Additionally, we pointed out that deep discounts and also their multi-channel tactics were quite expertly used to drive that success hour by hour over Black Friday. And then finally, on a positive note, we've seen really through our search data that consumers are seeking more sustainable and ethical retail, particularly with the rise in searches in single-use plastic and palm oil. And a number of brands have caught on quite successfully, including Iceland, Sainsbury's, M&S and Asda.
So this is what we feel are the top questions to answer in 2019 as you're planning your strategy. So what is the right sort of mix in terms of your channel strategy, and how should we think around the continued growth that we're seeing in online and higher conversion rates? When it comes to discounting, how to best use those promotions and offers. What can we learn from Amazon, but what also can we see in terms of the gaps in what they're doing to help our own bottom line? The Amazon strategy specifically, as a retailer or brand, what are you doing to combat Amazon? From a branding perspective, Will it be, you know, more top of funnel channels like TV and sponsorships that become more critical against this kind of pricing and promotional kind of war? And then from an ethical retail perspective, how are you working to meet these growing consumer expectations? Because no doubt they're going to be even stronger this time next year. And then from a Brexit perspective, you know, what are you going to do, you know, after March, but also possibly what are you going to do tomorrow as well?
And how are your consumers reacting to that? So really that exercise that Giles had shown with looking at that share of audiences within going to your site and also to your competitor's site as well.
So what's coming up? We've got a marketing insights calendar that's for 2019 to help support a lot of those planning efforts. So we've sent that out, and we'll send that out again. And please ask if you haven't received it. We've also got our Christmas Unwrapped webinars for the US and also Australia and France taking place over the next week. So some exciting insights there to try and compare between the markets, but also see where there's kind of you know, new knowledge areas to pick up from those emerging trends. And from a sort of product, brand, overall sort of analytics within retail, we're rapidly expanding our capabilities outside of just the UK to all markets that we provide data on. So definitely ask if there's interest in additional markets there as well.
So apologies, we've run a little bit over in terms of our presentation part, but we just felt there was so many interesting insights that we wanted to cover from Cyber Week and from Christmas week period. We will be sending the slides and recordings after today to people who've registered, and we do have time to take probably just a couple of questions. And again, as Giles had mentioned, if we're unable to get to your questions now, an account manager will be in contact with you as well. So let's look at the questions. So here's a good one. Are you referring to the same thing when you talk about purchase rate and conversion rate? So you can see we got into quite a lot of detailed data around purchase rate and conversion rate. So that's an excellent question. No, we're not referring to the same thing. So when we're saying conversion rates, we're looking at the number of visits that lead to an online transaction or an online purchase, as we saw with the aggregate of the top 30 retailers, and as we saw with Amazon, just seeing a significantly higher conversion rate compared to that average. But when we're referring to purchase rate, we're zooming specifically on a product level. So these are the product page views that lead to an actual product purchase. So two different ways to show the effectiveness of both from a visit point of view and also from a product point of view as well.
Great. Got another question that's come through. Do you have any highlighted retailers who didn't rely heavily on discounts to drive growth? I'm trying to think through whether there was anything that came through in the analysis. I'm sure there certainly were some that we could pull out, maybe kind of related to some of the ethical sort of trends and sustainable trends. But I don't know if that's anything that you picked up in the analysis, Lisa.
So definitely putting me on the spot a little here.
Sorry.
So in that slide of the top risers, we did point out, particularly in that house and garden space, that there was a number of top players who were just offering 50% plus. But I would say that definitely discounting wasn't the main strategy. So like, for instance, what we had highlighted was Farfetch. They'd offered 20% plus on their designer range. But also, like, for instance, like Iceland, instead of offering a massive discount, and like the other brand that we noted, like the Beer 52 one, instead of offering like massive discounts, they instead offered like special prices and offers on social media. Like, for instance, Iceland offered a £2,500 pound prize if consumers signed up to their deals. So really different types of tactics that we use. Not just relying on that like massive discount. And
also, when the discounts were provided, there was a slightly different, I suppose, tilt to the way it was done with like the SodaStream example, with the kind of, you know, that you get the 50% off if you kind of follow the Fight Plastic campaign. So there's something there that they're kind of trying to drive the two together that's going on there.
Yeah, So I think that really wraps it up. We're at 3 o'clock now. So thank you very much for listening and for attending our webinar. As we mentioned, we'll be sending the slides and recordings through. And yes, feel free to send through any more questions